Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm joined with Joe 748 and our guest today, Flewster. Flewster, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Joe 748, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm feeling a little animated today.
Yeah, you look like you're about to go try your luck at El Cortez. I'm excited to hear Flewster's story. So let's hop right into it. Flewster, what made you interested in card counting and advantage play?
Oh gosh, it goes back a ton. Way back, probably 25 years when I was a young sailor in Washington State. Played blackjack on the side, just the $2 tables. Actually played blackjack with Robbie Knievel one time.
Oh yeah,
on the peninsula there. So, of course, I lost, but by gosh, I found a system, and it was. You win, you double your bet. If you win again, you half double up. And as long as you're on a winning streak, you're good to go. And boy, I played that strategy for a lot of years. That was, the all go to. And of course, with any of those, you lose. Over time, you can't win with that. So I'd gotten out of the military and I'd gotten remarried, and wife and I, we like to go to the casinos, and we played that strategy and just wasn't working. And one day I don't remember if I was looking up on YouTube, but something about, how to count cards. I tried to do it years ago and was never able to. And finally I was like, well, I'm going to start doing this. And I have a little bit of ADHD. And so when I jump into something, I jump in with both feet. And I bought probably every blackjack book on Amazon, devoured them all, started out with KO count, decided that we were going to do that and finally do something about losing all the time. And so that's how I kind of got started in the blackjack life.
And this was just kind of like, well, we're gambling already. Why don't we learn how to use a system that's going to be positive expectation? Was that the thought?
Yeah, it was the thought. And I'd never been to Vegas before. And so around that time, I was using KO, my wife. She didn't want anything to do with it. It was just one of my other side things that I'd started, and I was going to quickly pass through, she thought. We went to Vegas, went away from the strip for the $5 tables. I think stations, they all had $5 tables. And I remember I thought everybody was eyes on me. I thought everybody, my gosh, you're going to find me out. And I went from a $5 to a $30 spread that trip, and my darn hands were shaking with $30 out there. It was like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I think we won $800 or $900 on that trip. We had a good variance, but it was a lot of fun. So came back home and discovered BJA, and decided that I was going to practice more, and switched over to the high-low count then at that time.
And up to that point, what was your favorite book?
Oh, gosh. I think some of my favorite books are like storytelling books, kind of like yours. I really enjoyed The Blackjack Life, and Burning Tables in Las Vegas was really good, and Blackjack Insiders. Those are probably some of my favorites.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that the books that had the bigger impact, I think I just said this in a YouTube video, that, I'm really thankful for Stanford Wong and like the math books that laid it out there, but it really was the ones that talked about it where I realized, oh, this is a bigger thing. This is a more real thing than I had initially thought. So you got into Blackjack Apprenticeship, trained through that, went to high-low. And what was the plan? Just kind of like have a fun hobby on the side with card counting when you were going to go to the casinos anyway?
It was. And on that trip home from Vegas, my wife had asked me, she says, well, tell me about this card counting thing. Just explain it to me on the airplane home. And so I had a deck of cards and I explained things to her, and she says, well, that ain't hard. And so she started doing it with me. We started training together. I built a blackjack table, bought an old Binion's felt off of eBay, and I built a blackjack table. And we practiced day in, day out. Double deck. We had not a lot of six deck at the time because double decks are so much better in our area. So we just practiced with each other. One would deal to the other person, get to the end of the shoe, count down the rest of the shoe, make sure your counts were good. And then the other person would make sure we were doing the right plays and everything like that. So it was just lots of practice. We'd probably practice 2 hours a night?
At least
2 hours a night, every night, and then go to the casinos on the weekends. So at the time I was working 4 days a week at a nuclear power plant. I've been there for 15, 16 years by this time. And Thursday through Sunday, we were in the casinos around our local area playing blackjack.
Okay, I was going to ask that. So you had a full-time job, your wife had a full-time job, but rather than watching TV in the evenings, you're practicing blackjack in the evenings?
Yes.
That's awesome. So tell us more about what your practice routine, you did that for just dealing to each other. What else, you probably went through the VO course and that stuff, but how did you feel like you were ready, or how did you train to get to the point where you were ready?
One, just by testing each other out, we could test each other out. And two, the test out on BJA was helpful. And at the time, I'd also bought all of Wattenberger's programs. CV Blackjack was really helpful because you can practice with CV Blackjack on your own just the same, and kind of with play chips, and so that. We also bought play chips for our table, actually casino style chips, same weight and feel. So we played with those when we did our practice. So it was kind of like the total real environment. We also threw as they talk about in the blackjack, Sesame Street counting behind us, to throw us off.
Oh yeah. So you played like Sesame Street counting songs in the background while you're practicing. So you're hearing numbers while trying to memorize or keep numbers ringing in your head at the same time.
Exactly.
And then you got to a point where you're passing your, I guess the BJA test out, but also the test outs you were giving each other. Did one of you progress way faster than the other, or was it pretty even?
I think it was pretty even because we would swap through. We would play 5 or 6 shoes, and then the other person would play 5 or 6 shoes, go through 5 or 6 shoes. And we'd keep swapping back and forth during our practice sessions. So it was kind of pretty even because we both tackled high-low pretty much at the same time frame.
Okay. So then you got to a point where you were both passing the test outs regularly and decided to put together a bankroll, or what were those next steps?
Yeah. And so at that point we were playing with just some pocket change, pocket money. We'd go take money out of the ATM when we went to the casino or whatnot. And we made the decision and we took $25,000 loan from a 401k and said, we're going to play $25 tables. We're going to play bigger stakes. So this is actually meaningful, not the $5, red chipping anymore. And so we did the loan, started playing, and like SD1 got slaughtered our first outgo.
Oh man.
We lost almost 50% of the bankroll in the first 3 months of play.
Were you over betting, or it was just like a horrific run?
Probably a little bit of both at some point. In the early stages, you're overconfident. You think you're better than you are. But we would come home, we'd test each other out. We were still good. It's real easy just to say variance, but it could have been, a number of factors.
Well, I guess I meant over betting in terms of, what was your risk? I mean, 50% hit, it happens, but it should be rare unless your risk is high.
Our risk was probably 5% at the time.
Okay.
It was a little high.
I've played at 5% risk, and the upward swings are amazing. The down swings can be pretty brutal too.
Yeah, and it was amazing because it came to like this abrupt halt, and it was just like a hockey stick on the way up. Probably 4 months into the journey, right before Christmas 2019, it swung the other direction just as fast as we lost it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the loan. I'm just curious. How does that work? You take a loan against a 401k, or did you just take $25,000 out of your 401k?
We took a loan out because in the end, you're paying yourself back the interest. You're not taking, it was a 5% loan, but it came out of my paycheck. So it actually went back into my 401k for my paycheck with added interest, but we're paying ourselves the interest. So it was a calculated slightly negative EV, but because of the time we were making about 8 to 10% on the 401k. So, you took a little bit of ding on that side because you're not making as much on the interest, but the terms of the return in the blackjack actually made up for that. So,
okay. Yeah, I usually tell people don't withdraw your retirement account. I didn't even know there's an option for a loan against your 401k. But so 4 months in, it turns around, it's going positive again. How much time were you guys getting in during this? Is it still Thursdays to Sundays?
Thursdays through Sundays. Now, my wife worked in a retail selling shoes, and so sometimes her weekends weren't with mine. So we might go up to a casino on Tuesday night or something with her days off, and I'd drag my rear to work tired because we were out all night playing blackjack or something. So a lot of times I'd go by myself, or she might go by herself if I was working and she was off. So, I mean, we kind of just played when we could.
How much were you guys maxing out at the beginning?
At the beginning, we were actually using a pretty decent spread, 1 to 6, usually maxing out 150, sometimes a little higher if the count was a little bit higher. If it went up to a true 8 or something, we might put out a little more.
And how did you guys divide you two playing at the table together or separately? Or
we did both. Sometimes we played, depend on the casino. At the time, sometimes we'd play together. And the nice part about that is you could wong out one hand. So it was like you were playing 2 hands at minimum bet on the tables for most counts. And then it's kind of unbelievable how the casinos don't see couples as threats in some aspects. If 2 young guys sit down at the table together and start raising their bets, and it's seen as suspicious. But a middle-aged couple sitting down at the table, they don't view us as much as a threat.
When we were playing separate tables, he was getting backed off way more than I was. And then when we started playing together again, he miraculously was getting a lot more time. So it was kind of strange how it worked out.
Well, also that's a good point that on double deck, if you want to play 2 spots, you got to usually double the table minimum on each bet. So if it's a $25 table, if you want to play 2 spots, you got to start with 2 spots of 50. But if it's 2 of you, then you can go from 2 spots of 25 to 2 spots of, whatever, 150 or whatever your max bet was. Is that right?
Yeah, we can. Nowadays, we're doing 2 by 25 to 2 by 200, 2 by 300 at our locals. For a big majority of our career, probably just up until the last year, we did play a lot separate. And like she said, I was getting backed off, and for some reason, they just let the women play sometimes.
There was one incident, we were both playing at the same table, but we sat down separately, so they didn't know we were a couple. And after a short amount of time, they come over and they countermeasured the table. And he played for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then he got up and walked away. And then the pit boss comes over and he's like, okay, go back to normal. And he's like, sorry, ladies, it doesn't normally take that long. And mind you, we're betting exactly the same. And it was just comical. I'm like, so they consider him a threat, but they just look completely over me.
Wow.
But so it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, there's what they're expecting to see, and those kind of biases or prejudices are a big deal. But playing together, they kind of overlook both of you?
Recently, yeah, last year, we got 480 hours at our locals and got countermeasured one time. We're from a state that you can't be backed off. You can only be countermeasured. That's probably going to give away pretty much where we're at. But we got countermeasured one time. And that was because I got overshot. I just bought in for another 500, threw it all out on the circle. And I think it was also because we both Snap called a insurance bet at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we played at this place for a lot of hours with no heat whatsoever. Another mistake we did that day, when we looked back on it, was we played in the middle of the afternoon with some really dead empty tables, and they just opened up a $50 table, and we both jumped on that. And I think they might have been looking at just that table a little harder. Just got caught.
So with the 1 to 6 spread, it must be pretty good double deck games to feel like the EV is good enough, the N0, all that stuff.
I think the N0 is a little longer. We have some superb dealers that deal quarter deck pin, usually on some of these games, between quarter deck and half deck pin. So we just seek those dealers out. That gets us that extra boost in our EV just because they're dealing so much deeper into the deck.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering about that because, lots of games, 1 to 6 is not going to cut it. But if you're getting a double deck game down to half a deck or less, that's going to do it for you.
Yeah, and mainly it's our locals that we play just that 1 to 6 spread because we're just trying to preserve them and keep them off of our, because we can get a lot of hours in. The N0 is a little longer, but combining that with those dealers, then, it makes for a little bit better for us.
So what did it look like for Mrs. Flewster to quit the day job?
Oh, it was amazing. So right after COVID, when, I went back to work, a lot of things changed with COVID, new management and just new rules. And I went back to work and was just miserable. I hated it. And you get up every day and it's like, why am I going to work? I hate this place. And after 6 or 7 months of that, Flewster was like, just quit. And I'm like, okay. I put my 2 weeks in that day and never looked back. One of the best decisions I think I ever made.
Where was your guys' bankroll at that point?
We were a little over 100,000.
Okay. So from 25 to 100 over, how long did that take to grow it from 25 to 100K?
A
year and a half at least.
Year and a half.
Playing a couple times a week here and there. So
at the same time, we'd also got into some other advantage play stuff at the casinos, as you guys know, that there's so much more there that they're not looking out for. And so those had a little bit higher EV. So once we learned those games, we were able to take advantage of them just a little bit more.
Higher EV per hour or just something you could do kind of like get more hours in?
A little bit higher EV per hour, but the opportunities weren't as often.
Okay, cool. We don't have to get into that. But yeah, that's helpful to know. And you guys grew it to that 100K mark, even with a couple of months shut down with COVID. That was pretty quick to grow it. Did you then end the loan against the 401k?
We did end the loan against the 401k, finally got it taken care of. We did that though after I quit my job.
Okay, well, so when did that happen, or how did you decide to make? That's a big deal for neither of you to have like a real source of income, a non-gambling source of income.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. I had him hauled around it. We were playing every weekend, Thursday through Sunday. I was going to work Monday through Thursday, and I was burnt out a lot. Now, I'd worked in this industry and worked at this power plant for 18 years by this time. The thing is our weekend income was more than double what we were making at the power plant. So she'd seen how miserable I was, and she finally told me, you need to make a decision. Do you want to continue the gambling or do you want to, work, but you're going to have to give up one of them. And I said, well, I'm just going to quit work because this we do together. It's something that we enjoy each other's time more than anything. Time also recently, new grandparents. We'd had, one grandchild was 2 years old and we had another one on the way, and just made a decision a lot either. I can spend a lot more time with them when we want, how we want, and we can do the blackjack and things full time, but at our discretion.
Yeah. How has that been? I mean, I know there could be this thought of like, oh, I go full time, I've got free schedule, but there's travel, there's, still a job. How has it been? Has it been freed up your time to quit the day job, but be gambling full time?
I would caution a lot of people because it is a grind. It does wear on you after a while of the travel because you burn out different casinos, different areas. When you have to play higher stakes, you have to, lower that N0 down so that you can make your money. So the travel's a grind, but it's also in the same time a lot of fun. We're going to different areas. We went to Southern California a while back. We've been to Biloxi, Vegas, of course, lots of times. We're taking a summer trip we're planning. The freedom is what's awesome, but it's allowed me to pursue other things at the same time. So we can make even more money from home on the side, doing some other things. So like taking money and using that for some day trading. We've also gotten into some real estate also. So blackjack's allowed that freedom for us to do and pursue, I just think, a better quality of life in a lot of aspects. So 5 or 6 years of this, and I think we're done. Have a brand new house paid for by the casinos, and then finally retire.
Well, we don't need to get into your retirement plans, but you don't think you'll go back, I guess, to the day job?
No, nope.
When you guys lost that initial half of your bankroll starting out, what was going through your mind then at that point? Were you just like, oh, this is normal, let's just press on? Or were you having second thoughts about pursuing this?
I had a lot of second thoughts about pursuing that. We doubled down on our practice, read more. It was a very big struggle to lose that kind of money because I came from no money, came from nothing, you know. I was working at 8 years old, throwing newspapers just to have money so that I could buy myself a bicycle because my parents didn't have the money. And so losing, you know, almost $12,000 in a few months was devastating. And so this doesn't work. It's a scam. Something's going on. You know, maybe we just got lucky in the start when we were just messing around. And so, yeah, to anybody that loses like that, it can be a very mental challenge.
What kind of convinced you to just keep going ahead? Like, what was like, was there a moment where you're like, you know, let's just go for it?
You know, it's just because we just started winning again, you know, just the things just started turning around. It's like, okay, you know, we came home one night with extra $500 or extra whatever. And it's like, okay. And then I watched my curve grow on our chart and things started straightening out, you know, and it's like, okay, the math does work. We are getting to where we're supposed to be in terms of EV. And so once we kind of figured out all that, things started clicking. You know, you get more proficient at the tables, your act gets a little better. Now we have an act that's kind of looks stupid most of the time, probably to most people, but we have fun with it.
How many hours would you say you've been able to play locally?
Last year, we got 480 hours in.
Of counting?
Counting.
And then more hours of other, I mean, it's not just counting that you're doing.
No, it's not just counting that we're doing. I would say total play last year, we were a little over 1,600 total hours in the casinos between the two of us. So if you look at that, it's less than half of our normal full-time jobs because that's combined hours for the two of us, the 1,600.
Yeah, there's the travel time too, all that stuff. I think it really does come back to what you're saying about the quality of life, you know, and that's a personal decision. You know, I'm not flying around the country in casinos because that's not the quality of life I want right now with, you know, young kids at home. But in your situation, even if it means travel hours, if it's a higher quality of life than your guys' previous jobs, then it doesn't feel like as much of a grind as the alternative.
Are you guys playing rated at these locals?
So we don't play blackjack rated. So our philosophy when we go in is if we're doing other plays, we can play rated. If we play blackjack, we don't do the other plays and we don't play rated. So basically, if we're in the casino, we're either giving up our name solid or we're not giving up our name. It's a catch-22 in a lot of aspects, but the pit bosses never question us. We're such a local face that when we play blackjack, they're like, oh yeah, that's right. You don't play your card when you play blackjack. I'm sure that they know our name if they pieced a bunch of other stuff back together, but so far it's been working for us.
How long are you playing sessions at these locals each time, would you say, at each place?
It kind of varies. Sometimes, most of the time we try to stay under an hour. We play for an hour. We've got 4 locals that we can bounce around for different shifts and different things. But other times, and it's a mindset that I work on, but you get stuck. You get into that first shoe and you lose, and then you're trying to chase the money back out, and you end up being there for 4 hours trying to dig yourself out of a hole.
Yeah. So if you're losing, you're able to stay a little bit longer. When do you kind of limit yourself time-wise if you start winning?
We always play the gambling superstition. We double up and we leave. That's how the pit looks at us. And they're like, oh, we make a big announcement of it. Oh, we doubled up, time to leave type things. And they just eat it up.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. I like that. when you're playing locally, what are there other things that you're doing to help preserve your longevity?
Yeah, between her and I playing together, she can do a burden of the counting. And I can be yucking it up with the pit. I can be watching the ball game on the TV. I can be, talking to everybody else. And all she has to do is pass our code word back to me for a count. I don't even have to look at the table. Sometimes I can count the chips in my hand and just kind of like I'm watching the game and just throw the chips out on the table because for some reason, they suspect the male of being the counter. I'm not looking like a counter at the table. She's counting, she's passing the counts to me. I'm watching the ball game. I'm yucking it up with the pit. I'm, whatever. And that's gotten us a lot of time being able to play as a team in that aspect.
I love that. It's playing into the, most card counters are males. And so it's playing into that. It reminds me of the Highlanders when they would have female sequencers into the casino. The women are just the arm candy, but they're actually the ones that are doing all the mental gymnastics of sequencing while the men are just, placing the bets according to the signals they're given. And it plays against the casinos aren't thinking that, the woman here is the real mastermind in this situation. Yeah.
And that's, we play their superstitions against them. We also, on the road, we can play Gorilla Big Player with the half-drunk husband coming up with his wife playing, the minimum blackjack, and I can go up to the table and drop the two $500 bets, and she'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I got this, and play the half-drunk husband, and she's chastising me for placing big bets, and the pits just like shake their head and just like whatever, let them do it. So I'll be playing, a 50-cent slot where I can still see her, and she can give me the signal to come in, and I can just bring in some money and throw it on the table. So
you had grown the bankroll as it continued to grow past that 100K mark.
We've well surpassed that quite a few times over. We bought a toy a few weeks ago. It was silly, but we went out to California and we rented a Mustang convertible, and we came home and bought one and walked into a dealership and told him, we kind of looked at it online. He told me they'd have it there. We walked in and decided we were going to buy it. And I said I was going to pay cash. And he's like, okay. And I walked out to the car and brought $50,000 in $100 bills and threw it on his desk. And he about flipped when he saw and he goes, "I didn't know you meant cash."
Yeah, cash.
Cash. So that's probably our most extravagant, but bankroll's grown to the point where, if we quit today, our household expenses, we could almost 4 years without even having any income.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I want to take a quick moment and talk about the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. If you haven't checked it out, you really don't know what you're missing. There is everything you need to train, find community, and get the tools you need as a card counter. There's a test out drill in the training suite. And if you aren't testing your skills regularly, you really shouldn't be playing a casino. There's an entire video course that covers the basics all the way to more advanced stuff like cover, team play, casino relations. There's betting software, a forum, a chat room with regional chat rooms to meet with local APs, as well as results tracking software and members only podcasts. So check it out at blackjackapprenticeship.com.
Back to I had a question about some of your local play. How often do you guys get countermeasured, or have you really gotten countermeasured that often at all? Or
so prior to COVID, and I'd gotten countermeasured from most places because we were playing separate. So COVID allowed us to take a break, and at the same time, we did travel to another area with casinos, and we played up there for almost a year. And then when we came back to our locals, it was like they forgot about us, but we'd had our act together as a couple. And so when we came back, we just started playing as a couple. And
well, once they dropped the mask mandate too, they didn't recognize him because he didn't have the mask on anymore. And that allowed him to get more time in.
Interesting. It's like the opposite of most of us. The
right.
mask allowed us to get time in.
I'm surprised that casinos, this is kind of a side note, but it's like we can spot a counter half a mile away, and any counter usually does. But for some reason, there's a lot of counters out there now that they come in the casino with their fanny pack slung across their chest and wearing a mask, and they saunter right up to the blackjack table. And I look at her and I'll be like, watch that shoe. And, like clockwork. And it's like, how are the casinos not, just immediately being on these guys?
Yeah. There's just so many gamblers too. Like the flip side is how many straight gamblers casinos back off because they don't know any better. There's only so many resources a casino can put towards really detecting legit AP. And even those resources are probably too much because they're probably spending more money to stop APs than APs are costing them. But that's my opinion. That's not just my opinion. That's like Andy Yule. People that work on the casino side would say that too. But I know what you mean.
I actually talked with Andy Euro at the Cosmo one time. We spent about half an hour talking about that. So, but speaking of getting somebody backing off ploppies, I actually got a ploppy backed off of a table in Suncoast.
Oh, yeah.
What happened was we were playing separate, and I got backed off at Alante. And I didn't realize Alante and Suncoast were both Boyd properties and that they flyered. And we went down to Suncoast, and I sat down at a table and I started playing. And at the same time, this other young kid sat down next to me and started playing. Shoe was totally neutral. But after the first shoe, the pit boss comes over and she grabs this kid's chips and she throws them in the middle of the table. She goes, "You're coloring up. We don't like the way you play blackjack. You can't play no more." And the kid's like, "What did I do?" And she goes, "We just don't like the way you play blackjack, and you're coloring up and leaving." And he's like, "But I play here all the time." And the pit's like, "Well, we don't like the way you play blackjack, and it's our decision." About that time, the pit rings again, the phone rings again, and they call her over there, and she goes over to the phone, and she looks at the table, and the look of horror on her face is absolutely priceless. And she comes flying back over to the table, and she looks at the kids. She says, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry. It's not you." And she points and she goes, "It's him." And the kid didn't know what to do. He was beside himself. But
you could have saved that kid a lot of money if he would have left and never come back when he first was getting backed off.
Yeah. But it was pretty funny. It just shows how, I don't know, they're so fast just to back people off, maybe it was true identity. They just got the wrong person.
Well, they're definitely fast to back people off because, I'm getting messages constantly from people who they're like, "Hey, I don't even know how to count. And I won a bunch and I got backed off." And it's like, dude, these casinos, cutting off their nose to spite their faces. But at this point, you guys, you're still locally betting up to 2 spots at 200-300. You're betting more. You were mentioning dropping 2x500. You betting any more on your trips?
We do bet more on the trips because we don't really care, about preserving any of those. It's, hit and run, pretty much just go throw and fire at them, take the money and then basically force them to back us off. It's like, catch us if you can. If it's an area that we plan on maybe playing for a few days, we might play light during the first part of the trip just to kind of get them used to us a little bit. And it seems to work with our couple routine. And then after that, it's fire away at them.
What's your biggest win to date?
Biggest win to date, probably together we made about 6,500 one night. We kind of just quit at that point. We were like so excited that we were like, let's just leave.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty amazing. You guys have made multiple six figures, or it sounds like several $100,000, but not with the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 session wins. It's a little bit more hit and run.
Yeah, a lot of that has come from more advanced stuff. That basically networking, through BJA and things like that has gotten us things that, are outside of card counting.
Yep.
But it's the networking, it was the start, the blackjack and the networking and BJA and meeting people and being friendly. I like to talk to everybody. So I might find a way to talk to a counter, make some friends. Usually if somebody's coming into our area and I know, I can get them rooms because we have so much comps in our local area. We had a group come in a few weeks ago. I got them all rooms for the weekend so they could play blackjack. So, and that in turn gets you a lot more information, on other stuff coming back to you, where to play, how to play, stuff like that. So,
yeah, for, quite a few pros, card counting is the entrance into the whole world of AP. People take different paths, but at this point, I wouldn't go pro. I wouldn't go full time if I'm not at least like getting into more than one way to get money out of a casino. There's the exceptions. There's the, I don't need to say names. There are exceptions. They're just crushing straight blackjack tables, but I totally get it. And it's the networking where you're going to get into some of these opportunities.
And it is, because there's some places that maybe they're not even on Casino 411. The game is better than what's on there. But you'd learn that through networking, like, hey, they changed the rules or they changed something wasn't updated. We try to update stuff when we can, but there's some games that are just so good you don't want them being crushed by everybody and burning them out type things. So those are the kind of plays that you find through networking.
When you guys are on the road, does your act with a husband and wife team does that work just as well as it back home, or is it still pretty quick back-offs? Like, does it only work at home because you're familiar faces, or?
It works pretty well. It depends on the casinos, but in Vegas, on the outskirts, Red Rock, Green Valley Ranch, some of those properties, we've sat for 4 hours at the table just firing away at them, and they haven't touched us. We got almost an hour at El Cortez, both of us. We were playing together, and the pit boss comes over and he was going to back us off, I think, but he looks down and he goes, "Oh, wait, there's two of them." And he goes, they left us in for another 15 minutes before they backed us off. So, and we were doing a 25 to 200 spread on their double deck at El Cortez and not holding anything back on them really, and mirroring each other. A lot of times we do opposition betting where one of us might go down in a low count, like Nathaniel Tilton in his book states, kind of do some of that opposition betting where it might go to a true 4, but I might lower my bet. She might raise hers a little more, and the next one, it might go up to a true 5. She drops her bet. My bet goes up a little bit. So as long as we're getting that money on the felt is where we're at.
Yeah, I really like that approach because you kind of play it off like, oh, my hand's going to be the good one next round, or her hand's going to be the good one next round. You play off that. So that's a really good technique.
And we've experimented with a play where if the count goes up and if you win your bet, you can go up. Now, like the first person, let's say I win my bet, I'll be the one that might ramp during that count where she'll stay pretty bottom end, maybe a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 spread, just kind of low. And then maybe the next count, if she gets the first hand, so it's kind of like, it looks like you're chipping up on them and the other person's staying pretty much neutral, even though that count's rising. So they kind of throws them off.
Nice.
For those listening or watching, as long as you're calculating the cost of any of these forms of cover, there's a lot of things you can try and that I've done and a lot of people have done. Just make sure you're calculating the cost of it.
Exactly. Another thing that we always try to do, especially at our locals, is we don't have the chips on the table. We color up or have them color us up as we go. So we don't have a big pile of greens sitting in front of us. But as I stated before, they know our mantra is like, we might buy in for $500. If we reach a $500, we make it a known. We're coloring up, we doubled up. It's time to leave. And they know that's how we play. So some pit bosses will be like, well, looks like you doubled. Are you ready to leave? Yep. And we're either they know and they don't care because we're not just burning them down, or they just truly don't understand what's going on.
What has it been like just on the marriage, traveling, like, is it like, hey, couples that AP together stay together? Or is it like, that's stressful on the marriage, or a little bit of both?
She's my best friend, and this is something we both really enjoy doing, and we just have a blast. We share responsibilities. A lot of it is I'm responsible for, making sure we have the hotels and the trips planned and all that. She does the back end side of things, making sure the suitcases are packed, the laundry's ready. We just make a great team. So as long as you're doing it with your best friend, I don't think that and doing something you both really like doing, it's really not a problem at all.
That does seem like a big part of it is the alignment of goals and values. On the forum, there will be discussions, and sometimes it's like, oh, my significant other isn't really into it. It's like, well, that's not going to work.
But if you can get your significant other into it, the opportunities for a couple, especially middle-aged couple playing together, looks like somebody that has more of the opportunity to be putting bigger money out on the table. A young kid that's throwing out big money kind of gets that suspicion a lot earlier. And I feel bad for those guys that have to dodge all that kind of things. We don't get ID'd going into the casino. We walk right in. We walk right past the line of kids getting ID'd. So it's just so much easier being the middle-aged. We're both in our 50s, so we can just run through it.
I'm sure I've said this before, but when I got into card counting, I read Burning the Tables in Las Vegas. And I think I read whatever it's called, a casino guide to surveillance or something like that. And he's talking about basically, young people stand out more. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll put this card counting thing on pause till I'm in my 50s or 60s. And I thought that for like 3 seconds. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, who knows if card counting is going to be around. I'm glad I haven't been waiting the last 20 years and waiting another 20. But there definitely are the benefits of looking the age where you would have the money. If you're younger, you just got to deal with it, and do the best you can. Yeah.
It's definitely been a fun trip for us, fun journey for us in the last few years for this.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with us before we're done? Any other words of wisdom or stories you want to get off your chest?
Not a lot that I haven't posted in the forums, but I remember one story that I had where I'd been countermeasured, and I went out on the main floor. And I know after being countermeasured or being backed off, you should try to remain anonymous as you can and get out of there. But at this point, I went out on the main floor, and there was a guy that was so drunk that he was betting two hands of 2,500, and there was an open seat on third base. Now, worst they can do is countermeasure us. So long story short, I sat down, and they were too worried about my 25 to 150 spread, totally ignoring this guy betting two spots at 2,500, so drunk that he could barely read his cards.
Oh my gosh.
At one point he started, I had super good variance. They actually tried to cut the deck in half, but not quite. That was their first attempt, but they still kind of wanted to appease him. He started asking me for advice one time, and the pit was yelling at me that I couldn't help him. Like, you can't help him. You can't tell him how to play his hand. And there was 3 pit bosses at the table, and made one patron so uncomfortable that she says, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to be around this. And she left. And so finally they countermeasured to the point they were only going to deal 2 hands. And the guy's like, what's going on? And I said, well, I'll tell you what's happening. I said, you're winning too much, and they don't like you winning. So they kind of cut that so you can't win no more. And he got so mad, and the pit went out of their way trying, no. And he goes, I said, well, Ameristar lets you play all you want. And he starts gathering his chips up. I said, I'll drive you there if you want me to. And he's like, yeah, let's go.
Oh my God.
This place. We're done. And he's putting his chips in his shirt, and they're falling all over him. No, come back and play. And he's like, no, you won't let me win. And he probably had 65, 70,000 in purples and stuff in front of him. And he walked out the door. I've never seen him back in that place.
Wow.
And their EV on his 2 hands by far outdid my expected value. They should have been dealing as deep as they could and as fast as they could, and let me play whatever I wanted to.
Dude, I mean, I love that story, because that's, a really clear example of what casinos do all the time. Casinos give bad deck penetration to every gambler, and it's costing them money because they want to keep these few card counters from winning money. But your story is like such a clear, obvious example of it. But they're doing this constantly because they're so afraid of us, the 0.1% that can actually beat them, that they're costing themselves fortunes to keep from losing smaller amounts to us. But what are you going to do?
That's on them. they want to make a bad business decision, I guess, but it is funny how at the time, I mean, that spread with that cut that they were giving me was only $46 an hour EV with a probably 160 hour N0. And so his was probably $50 per hand EV, with two hands out there. So yeah, they cut off their nose to spite their face.
Yep. Well, that's great. Joe, did you have any last questions?
Yeah, I mean, just like being, now that you've been full-time for over a year now, is there anything that you kind of miss about your old job, or are you just 100% like all in on Advantage Play full-time?
I miss the people I worked with. I don't miss the industry. I don't miss the pace that we had to maintain and the requirements that we were put upon us. This has allowed us so much more freedom, so much. I can do what I want. I don't have to ask a boss if I can take a week's vacation. I don't have to ask or call in. If I call in sick, it's my wife. I'm just like, I'm not going anywhere today. I don't feel good. If I'm feeling burnt out, like this next 2 weeks, we're going to work this weekend, and then I'm taking 2 weeks off. She's not, but I've just been kind of burnt out lately. And so I'm just like, I need 2 weeks out in the wood shop. I'm going to go, make some stuff, taking some time off, and realign myself before we take a big trip. So that's the freedom that I like to do. I'm going to go visit my mom, work on her house a little bit, and some other things like that. So it's just kind of the total freedom versus being the slave to a job. It's not for everybody though, because this is, there are a lot of times when we went last year, May to June, we went on a $40,000 downswing. Not many places you can work for 2 months and lose $40,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that will test your mettle. But if you got the attitude and the fortitude and the bankroll to support you, don't quit without at least a year or two in your bank account, because this job can be brutal.
Yeah, I just did a video on, how I would go about full-time at this point. If I were to start now, how would I go full-time? And yeah, definitely work towards it, quit the job only when it makes complete sense. And I would have given that same advice 20 years ago, but I have no regrets about full-time Advantage Play, but it's really not for everyone.
On another note, I was 5 years from my full pension and walked away.
Wow.
So I'll still get a pension. I just won't get my full pension. But the money we're making, the extra AV that we're making now far outweighs what I would have made extra in my pension every month. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. If people want to read some of your other stories, they can read those on the forum, it sounds like, and we'll see you on the BJA forum.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys. Joe748, why don't you see if you can get an hour in El Cortez?
Yeah, right in there right now.
And we'll catch, if you guys want to learn more about card carrying Advantage Play and, beating casinos for real money, check out blackjackapprenticeship.com.